Welcome back to the next episode of our Avalanche season preview from your folks over at DNVR. We're talking defense for the Avalanche on today's video. You guys know the guys at the top. We'll get to them. I want to start at the bottom here. And at this point, now keep in mind we're recording this a week before the season, so we'll see how it does pan out. But at this moment, Brad Hunt, you're number 7 right now? Yes?
I guess if you're playing it safe and you're not fun or imaginative at all, yes, it would be Brad Hunt. I mean, for all the reasons why NHL teams make the decisions that they do, it's Brad Hunt.
Yeah. I mean, you can try and sell me on Malinsky if you want to.
I was going to try and sell you on Nate Klarman, but
that's not going to happen.
You don't know?
That is fun, but a tougher sell for me.
Yeah. You mean a guy that only has like 70 some odd games in the AHL across the last 3 years?
It only just made the compelling case for the AHL, which I want to give him full credit for doing. But Brad Hunt is evergreen. And that's why I don't think this will age badly at all. No, but what I do mean is there is a stability and a familiarity and a constant in what Brad Hunt brings. Even though I don't know that it's fully earned the trust of Jared Bednar to deploy him more than 8 minutes in a night, it might be a requirement to save Cale Makar from breaking too early in the season. And I do hope that with consideration for load management in mind, something of a priority going into this year, Brad Hunt makes the most sense to be the 7th guy because I think they would trust him more than the Malinskys and the Klermans of the world, though I think that's fun and should get some consideration at points this season. I think unfortunately, knowing the reality of injuries, it's going to happen. Brad Hunt should be the mainstay there to some degree. I think on the flip side of that, he is the captain of the Colorado Eagles. And I think even from like a family money pay perspective, being in the American League more consistently is better for Brad Hunt, the person. But he just, especially with young players, he makes the person he plays alongside more comfortable, and I like that quality that Brad Hunt brings.
I love the person. Used to love the player more. Obviously, now he's aging, and we all know that. I think he's your 7th today. I think in an ideal world, he's your perfect 8. Like Megan said, being in Loveland, being the captain, getting everybody ready there for college. He's at that stage in his career, but he's such a good pro, and he's such a good guy's guy that right now, he is the perfect 7th in my book because that doesn't mean Malinsky or anybody else on the list that, Middleton or anyone. They need to play. I don't want them coming in here and sitting on the bench. I'm not saying that Brad enjoys being, in the press box, not on the bench because as a 7th, you're probably not playing, right? I'm not saying Brad enjoys that, but I'm saying Brad can do that and still be not losing anything with his game because of all the experience that he has. So I'd rather have the Malinskys playing in Loveland instead of sitting and not dressing. So I think today Hunt's your perfect 7th. In an ideal world is your 8th. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if they do go get, like AJ said, through a trade or waiver wire or anything like that to go and upgrade a little bit there. But right now, I think that's where he's at.
And to just real quick on that point of he doesn't necessarily need to play. Most of his NHL career has been spent as that.
Yep.
The guy that guy that will rotate in and might go a month between appearances. You go and look at his career. It's not like he's been this like. It wasn't like he was an 80 games per year guy who transitioned out of it.
Over 70 games.
He's a guy that has largely been the fill-in. So when you're talking about somebody that's comfortable in that role, certainly he would get the nod over a Sam Malinsky, who you just want to be playing because he doesn't have much pro experience yet. That's a guy that you just want to play.
And to Brad, because I've seen it in Vegas, it's not easy to go 20 games without dressing.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Then you're dressing, and then you're playing, and then you're thrown out there in a crucial situation. Always been able to answer the bell, and that's to your point, to my point, anybody's point right here. That's why he's a perfect guy to be in that spot.
Let's move on to some of the guys we're expecting to dress for opening night. With Jack Johnson, the Avs running this back again here. He's been a perfectly serviceable bottom pairing guy now for the Avs for multiple years. He does have the fun fact of playing more than a regular season's worth last year after coming back to Colorado.
That's true.
Look, it's functional. Is it good enough?
No. You go and you look at his numbers, even in isolated numbers in Colorado, and he's still far below what you would want even out of a sixth defenseman. What you would want out of a sixth defenseman is what you got out of Erik Johnson last year.
Sure.
You know, and while we look at Erik Johnson and say, oh, he badly slipped, we're comparing that to when he was the number one guy in 2013-14. Like, we saw that as a number 6 right now. Jack Johnson is still one of the worst number 6 guys in the league. There are things that he does well. He's really trusted by the coaching staff. He's reliable day in and day out. But in terms of upside, downside, there's far more downside than upside. He has 83 games played last year. He had 8 points. He had 8 points.
Less than a point every 10
it's
games.
Almost an unfathomably low number for a guy that played 83 games. There's no offense.
Brad Hunt had more points in half the games.
Right. We just had Brad Hunt's thing up there. It was 10 points in like 40 some odd games.
Those blue line bombs.
That's a bomb.
like Jack Johnson, the leadership and the you know, he's a good dude and he's well liked, and there's a lot of like intangible stuff involved with Jack Johnson. But he's the most obvious when they walk into opening night, he will be the most replaceable player in that lineup. He'll be the easiest guy for them to replace at the trade deadline, and probably their number one goal at the trade deadline. Now, if Sam Belinsky eventually takes the job, whatever, like, that's fine. Then maybe that changes. But right now, when you look at it, they don't even have a fourth line center, and Jack Johnson is still worse than that guy. So it's, you know, I'm not meaning to, I guess I'm kind of meaning to speed bag him a little bit here, but like, the drop off from their 1 through 5 to their 6 is gigantic. It is significant in that he is an active detriment offensively. It's not that he's not a great offensive player. He's a black hole. And defensively, he's still below average.
Yeah.
So the one thing that he does well for you, he
Doesn't
does
even do
poorly.
that well. Yeah.
So for me, this is a championship level roster with one guy on it that should not be an everyday player. If Jack Johnson is your 7, I have no complaints. None. But as an every night number 6, my answer is no thanks. He's the most replaceable guy on the roster.
I think that's a reasonable take on the whole. Do we have some positives to take over here? Can he at least help on the penalty kill side or something? Or are we taking this bag and popping it?
You can put him out there.
I don't have much to add. I'm not going to pile on either. I would feel much more comfortable if he was 7 instead of 6.
I think it's universal feeling for sure.
The penalty kill point is an interesting call out. You'd like to see Josh Manson be that guy, but without knowing if Josh Manson will be healthy every game in and game out. Jack Johnson is another player then that should be on the penalty kill, especially with Erik Johnson having left. That does leave that as an open position for Jack Johnson to step up in that way. And sure, they could use the help.
And for like league minimum, I mean, come on.
Right.
Like,
Listen, he's a 7, right? You know, ideally. But like you said, and that's why he's there. He's a good person.
Yeah.
He's a great teammate, right? Guys love to have him at the rink every day, and that goes a long way, and that's why he's there. And he might be able to help by not even dressing some days, and I think that's why he's around. You know what I mean? But I agree with you on the assessment of the play. It's, might not be Jack Johnson from 15 years ago, right?
Well, look, here's what I'll give Jack Johnson. He's a known quantity, right? You at least know what you're going to get out of him. And that's why Josh Manson might be the biggest question mark on the Avs D-core this year.
I think that's easily the case.
Is he even
All
going to
the
be
other 5
healthy?
guys you're pretty comfortable with.
He is yet to play a game as the recording of this video. He's yet to play a game since he left in the playoffs last year. Mm-hmm. You just have no idea where this guy's health is going to be at coming into and going through this season. There's a possibility that he's perfectly healthy and could be a significant impact player for Colorado. There's a possibility he plays 3 games and that's it.
This is not your average like 5th defenseman on a team, because as we've seen, when Josh Manson has been healthy and has played in Colorado, he's been pretty good.
Yep.
It was a slow start. There was an adjustment where he was getting accustomed to a lifetime's difference because he had an entire career
being told he's a defensive D.
Well, and like playing next to Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler types, who did all of the puck rushing and all the offensive things, and he wasn't asked to do any of that. And he got to Colorado, and they took the chains off, and Josh Manson looked like a man reborn. And at first, he was, he was Bambi on ice that didn't know what he was doing. He was flailing around a little bit, couldn't pick his spots. You remember him in the Cup run.
He's a monster.
He was great in that Cup run. He was great. which is why the enthusiasm for bringing him back existed. But the injuries are the number one question. He has not stayed healthy for years now.
Yep.
He has been plagued by injuries, and it's not one injury recurring. You know, it's not like Ryan Murray with a back injury every single year. It's different parts of his body. And when you're a rugged, physical player like that, you need your body to hold up. It has not for him. So I'm not concerned even a little bit about the player when healthy. I'm concerned about just the availability. If he posts every day and he's in your lineup, he will be a very good player for the Avalanche. If he does not, you have a really big problem.
You're right. If you go back, like, I don't know, 3-4 years, I don't have it in front of me. We can look it up, but he does have like a 40, 50-point season or even more. He was outstanding in Anaheim that 1 year, putting up numbers. I don't remember who was hurt that year, but he had, some power play time. He had some, but he responded well.
Yeah.
I do believe that the Avs, if, again, knocking on wood, we're not saying he's not going to be here, but he brings that element that's so different than the other guys.
Yep.
For me, he's a bright shot Braden McNabb. When I say that is, Braden McNabb for me is one of the best players in the NHL, blue line to blue line. Very wild card, don't know what to expect, man. You better keep your head up because he brings that element to the game.
Yeah.
He stamps you. Manson's the same way. And it sets the tone for games. It sets the tone for divisional rival games, for playoffs, for all that kind of stuff. And he's probably one of the only guys in the Avs lineup that can do that.
I'm not saying the rest of the Avs D is easy to play against, but Manson physically is by far the hardest one to play
I
against.
go back, and I know Megan's going to say, because Megan's Megan, that he's the nicest guy in the world. And, I get that, But then he's got a split personality because he's very mean on the ice. And I tell you, you don't have to look further. I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His dad was a mean SOB to play against. I mean, oh my Lord, he was tough. And you didn't know what to expect from him. And I think Josh is a little bit of, same mold as his dad in that sense. Obviously, I think he's a better all-around player than his dad. Not to say that Dave was a bad player, but Josh is when healthy, a very hot commodity around the National Hockey League.
Right? That's the kind of guy that will scoop your heart out to win a game.
Yeah.
And you need that. You need that, especially on defense.
And he's the nicest guy in the room.
Is someone like a Josh Manson critical? We've had the conversation a lot this offseason. The Avs need to take minutes away from Cale Makar, and arguably probably need to take minutes away from Devon Toews too. Is this Josh Manson's role this year, assuming he can stay healthy? She doesn't look confident.
Well, no, because it feels like he also needs a little bit of that load management.
To stay healthy himself, sure.
I'm looking at Byram a little bit just because he's supposed to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I have no reason to believe otherwise, just to clarify. And so that's where I'm looking for him to take a big step forward, because he is, when healthy, expected to be the guy that could eat some of those minutes, and very impactfully as well. You want that from Josh Manson as well, but just in seeing that he has had some injuries compound now, and because of how physically he likes to play, I'm not looking at Josh Manson to be that guy specifically. I'm looking at Girard to have a good year. I'm looking at Byram to have a good year. And this is where players like Jack Johnson, if he does continue to be six, if eating minutes is how he contributes in a meaningful way to help the D-core and redistribute the load a little bit, those are who I'm looking at more closely, because the way that Josh Manson likes to play hockey is already going to be really challenging on his body.
For sure. It's not an easy task to run into stuff the way he does on a regular basis. Let's move on to Bowen Byram, though, because this is a guy who has yet to really have a healthy season in the NHL. He's coming into this one as ready as he'll ever be. There's been flashes of greatness on both ends of the ice for this guy, but some lack of consistency, particularly on the defensive side. Let's start with this question with Bo. Is he a guy that can play both ends of special teams for Colorado this year?
Yes.
PP2 and pick your spot on the PK, wherever?
Yes.
Okay. Then I think Megan's on the right track. That's a lot of minutes that he can help eat up, whether it's taking Toews off a penalty kill or filling in. How many times last year did we see Makar just dip out of the power play early to manage himself a little bit?
Yeah.
Byram can help fill some of that. The question is, can Bowen Byram take the next step this year? Can this guy become someone that you're saying, is he a number 3? Could he push for the job as a number 2? Is he being underplayed on a second pairing? Do you think he can get there, or is that a bridge too far right now?
No, I think you're bang on. There's steps to a career, so he has this, first steps are over, right? His baby steps are done. Now you would think he's more like a teenager, right? Baby steps are done. Now you're a teenager before becoming an adult, right? So what I mean by that is, he's got the luxury, and some people will think it's bad. It's not bad. He's got Toews and Makar ahead of him. So that is an awesome way to grow as a teenager before becoming an adult. And now he's got a different contract. Therefore, he has different shoes to fill, right? And that responsibilities come with that. And then he has to show, if you just go with contracts, what he can do once he becomes an adult, and then gets into those numbers of, those number 2 defensemen in the league. So I think he's right there. I think he's ready for this for the challenge of taking that next step. I do believe he's got, again, look at it, he's got Stanley Cup experience. He's got the luxury of having played the last few years with guys like Toews, and he always talks about Cogliano, and so he's got the leaders around him to make sure he becomes a better pro than he has been. And those are steps that you take as a child, right? Now, like I said, I'm going back to the analogy of the teenager, but now he's going back to those next things here. And I think by talking to him, we had him on the show, right? I think he looks ready. I think he looks excited to take a next step. And if it means minutes, like you just talked about on the PK, things like that, and taking on a bigger role where there's less minutes on Toews and Makar.
People have been saying Toews and Kane for a long time, man.
Whatever. Because that guy on whiskey? No, I'm not. But Makar, then job well done. I do believe he's capable of that next step.
Hearing AJ talk about Georgiev in mini contract years, it feels similar for Byram. Mm-hmm. This extension is a period for him to change the conversation from can he overcome the injuries and change it completely to who, if you truth serumed Byram, I think he would tell you that what he wants to, what he's vying to be is a number 1, number 2 guy. Yep. And I don't know what that realistically looks like through Colorado, but this season is the next step to changing that conversation from injuries to that. And it comes with taking on more responsibility, and it's an important season then to change the conversation around him.
There is potential here for Byram to shape the Avalanche defense for the foreseeable future. If he can take the next steps, conversations that the Avs have to have about potentially extending Toews, what are you doing with Sam Girard, change a lot if Byram becomes a top 3 lock type of guy in this defense.
More than any other player, he has the ability to convince the Avalanche to not sign Devon Toews.
Yep.
Because, look, if he stays healthy and he has the same season he did last year, he's a 48-point guy.
Which is pretty darn close to what Devon Toews was.
Exactly. Yeah. And if we're talking about he's playing in all situations, he's doing all these things for you. I mean, the reason for optimism for Byram is he's so young, but we did see him in the Stanley Cup run get better and better and better and better. And by the Stanley Cup final, he was leading the Avalanche in even strength time on ice.
Yep.
They were trusting him more than any other defenseman with minutes.
Yep.
And he responded. He played very, very, very well in the Cup final against Tampa Bay. Like,
doesn't get any better than that.
At the tip top of the game in a Stanley Cup Finals. And that's why those of us in Colorado are huge believers in what Bowen Byram is capable of and why not everybody has one.
Yep. Let's keep it rolling here. Last season was kind of a tale of 2 Sams for Sam Girard. You had the first half of the season where, maybe it was coming off the injury, whatever it was. There were some struggles for Girard until about December. And then you saw the Sam Girard that everybody knows and loves in the second half of the year. The offensive production started to roll. His game really took an uptick. How important is it for Colorado to get that good, consistent version of Sam Girard this year?
Really important. Because there are a lot of teams out there with top pairings. Not a lot of teams with top pairings as good as Colorado's. But there, everybody had obviously everybody has a technical top pairing, but like there's probably 12 teams out there that have top pairings that you look at and say, yeah, okay, I trust those guys.
That's legit, yeah.
And then after that, God knows. It's so hard to find good defensemen and build good defenses.
Yep.
You look at, I know Eric loves the Vegas defense. There's a reason for that, because 1 through 6, you look at every single one of those guys and you understand what he brings to the table. You look at Sam Girard and you know what he brings. You know who he is. Mm-hmm. And to add on to what you said about A Tale of Two Sams last year, but his postseason series against Seattle, he was arguably the most reliable player that they had game to game.
No.
He wasn't their best defender, but the big mistake that he was prone to last year was not as evident in the playoffs. He played very well and very consistent, very, very steady for them in the playoffs. If that's the guy that he can be more often than not, 60 games of that, the Avs will be thrilled. He will probably have right in that range, that 30 to 35 point range again. And you're talking about a very good, productive, reliable, steady second pairing defenseman. He has his pitfalls. He's not physical. He will lose battles along the wall and in front of the net, especially in front of the net. But he's also one of the best in the league at breaking pucks out, skating them out, and passing them out. He's very good at it, which is a key to play in Colorado. That's how they play. That's a giant part of their identity and how they attack. And Sam Girard is very good at that. Sam Girard is a polarizing guy. I always say 5'9" guys always are. But with Girard, he is a guy that he fits. He fits.
He definitely fits the Avs style. I don't think there's any doubt about that. How are we projecting Girard's role this year? We kind of already talked about Byram maybe getting some of that power play time. Does Girard slot in there, or is this a guy that is mostly eating 5-on-5 minutes for you and has to pick his spots with special teams on either end?
Well, because of the presence of Tatar, I think that makes him expendable on the power play. And I think that could then let his talents be helping to redistribute those minutes. Like I talked about in pointing to Byram, I'm also pointing to Girard to be a part of that. And so he doesn't need to necessarily be on PP2 if he can be reliable and consistent defensively.
Sure.
In other situations.
I think Sam Girard is the guy that we all take for granted. You know what I mean? Like, I think we just expect him to be there, and it's like, and he is a serviceable NHL player. He is a good player. And I think even as a coaching staff, I think you just kind of take him for granted. But AJ just touched on it. If you're going to evaluate Sam Girard with his play in front of the net or his battles against the wall, then you're looking at it wrong, because that's where he's weak. But for most of the game, my dad used to always say, that's why he loved Forsberg, you love when, a guy like Forsberg, because you have the puck the whole game, but you don't have to defend. You don't have to battle in front of the net. You don't have to. And then, yeah, those things are going to happen in a game. We all know that. But I think more often than not, like you guys just talked about, Sam is first on the puck and the puck's out of your zone. And that is a huge thing in the National Hockey League, puck possession, right? So this guy, he's the perfect fit for me for the McKinnons and Rantanens and the offense that the Avs have. But yeah, if you're just gonna, say, yeah, he's not strong in front of that. Well, no crap, he's 5'9". I mean, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? So that's just, it's there. It's a known fact that it's gonna happen again. If people get frustrated by that, listen, in the first 5 games, it's gonna happen. But you can't just get bogged down on that. You got to look at his whole body of work. And I think Megan just said it. Again, what a nice thing that you can do. You can be on the power play. Maybe you're not the best power play guy in the world, but you can still be serviceable. Can you give some 5-on-5 minutes? Absolutely you can. And that's why I say this is a guy that we take for granted. I'm a fan of his. I do believe the guys love him. He's a big guy, again, he's 5'9". He's not big, but I think he's a very well-liked guy in that dressing room.
I think a good way to put it is, there are times where Girard's going to get caught, can't defend the guy net front. And that's no different than the times when Josh Manson gets caught throwing a pizza up the middle of his zone.
There you go.
Every player has their weaknesses.
That's right.
I would also posit that 32 teams are looking for Sam Girard.
100%.
Because you're talking about you're talking about a guy. Now, again, we've talked about it. You can't have 6 Sam Girards. Nope. You probably can't have 3 Sam Girards.
Agreed.
But if you've got one, you've got a good player.
Yep.
And in an era in which smaller defensemen are getting drafted and played more than ever, teams are looking for guys who can do what Girard does, which is effectively move pucks, 30-ish points a season, and play solid defense.
Yep.
It's not world class. He's good at what he's good
Can
at.
give you
He's got a great stick. He's
16 to 20 minutes a night.
He's very disruptive. He's reliable. He posts. He's not a guy that has injury issues. Like this is a guy that you can. He is plug and play. Drop him onto a second pairing. You pay him $5 million a year for the rest of eternity, and you don't think about it again
Because you don't have to.
It's
exactly.
a luxury. He's
That's
a
what I mean.
luxury
You-
few
you
teams
just-
can afford to have.
Yep.
That's what I mean. You take him for granted. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because he's just that. And he's first on. He's so fast, right?
Who's
So
feeding
he gets
McKinnon
on
off the
pucks
rush?
and- yeah,
It's Sam Girard.
And it's incredible because it is easy to take for granted. Oh, Bowen Byram's going to surpass him.
Yeah.
Well, that would take Bowen Byram playing really well.
Yep.
Because you look at some of these other teams, you think a team like Vancouver wouldn't kill to have Sam Girard on their second pairing. You know, teams that are desperate to try and make a postseason.
Yep.
And in Colorado, it's like, well, he's probably like the 4th best defenseman. Yeah, well, your defense is probably pretty good.
Yep. It's top defense in the league. Sam Girard is part of that, but the top 2 guys kind of important to that equation. I don't think there's enough superlatives in the world for the Avs top pairing. Starting with Devon Toews. Look, every true all-world player needs a running mate, and it's hard to ask for one better than Devon Toews. He does everything so well playing next to Cale Makar in exactly whatever it needs to be, whether it's jumping up into the play when Makar is sagging back, whether it's being the defensive monster of not even letting pucks into the defensive zone, let alone defending inside of it. Devon Toews, I don't want to say he's a linchpin to this defense because Cale Makar's on a whole nother level, but the Avs are a significantly worse defense without him. Can he continue to grow in this role, or is this it? Is this Devon Toews in his perfect immaculate form as the top human?
The way that I'll put it, and this is all I'll say about Devon Toews, Batman needed Robin, and Robin was also a superhero.
Well said.
Love it. Expectations for Devon this year?
It's like the conversation with Georgiev. He did everything that was asked of him last year. I expect him to do everything that's asked of him again this year. I think the only other thing, and this is not something I'm always privy to seeing, is the leadership role. It's always been a quieter part of what he contributes in the room, you know, in rooms that I'm not in. And I think that's maybe where there's growth that I won't even have a front row view of seeing. But other than that, I don't think you can really ask more from Devon Toews. He's so smart.
Yeah, I mean, a guy told me in the press box one time from another team, he goes, Devon Toews figured out how to master the simple aspects of the game, and he just ran with it. And that's what he does. He just does everything right.
Yep.
And less is more, but it's so effective. And I think he's been outstanding. And like you said, like everybody's saying, just sign him. Find a way.
Would have no complaints about that. Keep it rolling because let's face it, you guys know who Devon Toews and Cale Makar are, right? We don't need to tell you. For Makar, this is a guy who the Norris finalist conversation already feels pedestrian for this guy. The sky is the absolute limit at this point. He could truly become.
Is it?
He's going to break through to space.
Yeah, space is the limit. I don't think the sky is the limit for Cale Makar because we've not seen Cale Makar in 50 years.
Yep. It's beyond comprehension what Cale Makar is capable of. I don't know where the peak ends up. This dude could win a Hart in his career. It's not off the table. And every time I talk about him, all I ever have to say is enjoy it. Because I'm 31 years old now, and I've never seen a player like Cale Makar, and I'm convinced I'll probably never see one again.
I'm 32, so I'm just a year older. And then it's funny you're talking about the Hart because I was driving early this morning on NHL Network Radio, and then they were saying what we were talking about the other day, like nothing against Nathan McKinnon. They were saying, if you're going to bet McKinnon for the Hart, might as well take Makar for the Hart because the odds are unreal. Like, you know what I mean? Whatever the odds are, I don't know what they would be on Bet365, but it's like it's not far fetched that this guy can win a heart. I mean, again, I'm going to use my line and I'll pass it along to Megan. He's the most valuable player in the NHL. I stick to that, and I truly believe it.
He's also the nicest guy in the room.
Well, you just say that.
A lot of nice guys in that room.
Yeah, it's a great point. I say that about a lot of people.
Only one that likes Slurpees as much as Cale Makar, though.
No, it's true, though. He is just such a well-rounded player to have landed in Norris finalist conversations last year and having missed the time that he did. My only concern for him is health, and that is why I have talked about load management so much in the defenseman side of things, and it is because I want Cale Makar to have the longest career possible because it is so special what he is and what he means for young defensemen coming up watching him. And I just want him to not change the elements of his game that make him him, though, because I do think that he is still a physical player who is sometimes also acting as an extra forward on the ice. He is just so well-rounded and important to the team that I want for him not to be leading the league in average ice time at the end of this year. I want him to be somewhere like number 2 or number 3 if possible.
Look, the best version of Cale Makar is so good that you do what you have to do to get that guy. If that means cutting his minutes down, if that means, hey, he needs to take a couple games off here or there, you accept that and you do what you have to do without him so you can get him when you need him. He's just the best player in the world, in my opinion. You can have conversation about McDavid and McKinnon, but Cale Makar hits different. That's all there is to him.
I think if you got an honest opinion from 32 GMs, which defenseman they would take,
You'd
number
get
one,
32 Cale Makars.
you would get 32 Cale Makars.
Yep.
I mean, you might get the one guy that's on acid or something and is like, no, give me literally anybody else. And it's the wrong answer.
Yep.
It's the wrong answer.
It's Cale Makar. Cale Makar is the most dominant defenseman in the NHL. What he does offensively is it fits in an era in which offensive defensemen have blown up.
Yep.
He's special in that regard. But what he does defensively, he's not the most physical guy. But he will drop a C4 charge onto your chest if he needs to.
Yep.
Yeah, ask Eric Stahl about it. I'm sorry, Jordan Stahl. It was Jordan. Ask Jordan Stahl about it. Happened to him a couple times in the same game. You know, like he needs to do work on his net front battles and things like that. But you consider that he didn't have a net front battle in his entire AJHL career and not very often at UMass because he's had the puck the whole time.
Yep.
The NHL, he's had to learn how to defend at the NHL level because he finally played in a league where he was not with the puck all the
He's
time.
still got the puck a lot of the time.
And it's still 60%. And I'm not kidding. He's the most dominant defenseman in the league.
Yep.
I just don't. There is no overstating how good he is. There is no over exaggeration of the skill level. There just isn't. He's that special, and he gets better every year. And at some point,
the peak isn't even there yet.
right,
I think
like
that's the scary part.
At some point, there will be a best season, but we're never going to know it until it's over.
Yep.
Because he's such a special player that you don't want to say this is the best it gets.
More is always possible.
He could have a 110-point year, and we would all just be like, that's Cale Makar.
Yep. He's that good. He really, really is. And the Avs defense is that good. They really are a special group. Even if you believe they might be the second or third best defense as a whole, boy, are they capable of incredible things.
The thing about that conversation is the reason the Avs are in it is because Devon Toews and Cale Makar.
Yep.
It's not because the depth, which is good, but there are teams with better depth. Vegas
Sure.
and Carolina are two that immediately come to mind. But neither one, if you asked both of those teams, they would,
The best pairing in the world is Makar and
in
Toews.
a heartbeat, both of those teams would give up 3 of those defensemen to have Cale Makar on their team.
Yep.
In a heartbeat, both GMs would say, yep, I'll take that.
Yep. It's who he is. He's special. It's part of the Avs season this year and how this defense plays all season long. We're going to wrap up this season preview video for you. We've got more coming, including the big forward conversation in tomorrow's video. So like and subscribe here on YouTube to follow in for all of our season lead up and all of our other content. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video.